Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle, Coordinator Thompson, and I'm calling today's meeting to order at 1:32 p.m. Today is the first meeting of 2025 for the Heritage Grey Highlands Committee. Today, at the request of Member Matthews, we will go around the virtual table and take a moment to allow the members to introduce themselves. We do have a new member who has recently been appointed to the committee. So we'll go to you first, Member Campbell, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's nice to meet everyone. My name is Thomas Campbell, and I'm very excited to be joining the committee. My family and I have been in Grey Highlands now for 6 years, a year and a half on a permanent basis, and we feel very fortunate to be part of this community. So it's a real privilege for me to be able to contribute in a small, but I think an important way. On a more tangible basis, I have a graduate degree in business and 15 years professional experience in finance and mortgage underwriting, where I've underwritten hundreds of historically designated properties. And I also have an undergraduate degree in history. So I certainly appreciate and recognize the work that the committee is doing. And I think it is really important for the community. Um, when I'm not attending committee meetings, you'll probably find me skiing, hiking, or canoeing in the area, or just hanging out with our two lovable but terribly behaved dogs. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person at the next meeting.
Thank you, Member Campbell. It's nice to meet you and
Can
welcome.
I call a momentary hold? I can't hear very well. I'm going to go grab some of my hearing aids. My mistake.
Certainly. While Member Matthews has stepped away, we'll proceed to Member Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Coordinator Thompson. I'm Emmett Ferguson. I live down here in Kimberley. My family first moved up here in 1989, but I was away for school and other things, which saw me come back here, I want to say around 2018. So, yep, that's me. I live here and I'm self-employed as a consultant focusing on nonprofit and social enterprise evaluation, program development, and research. And yeah, I've been the vice chair of Heritage Grey Highlands for a few years now under the stellar guidance of Chair Matthews.
Thanks, Member Ferguson. Next, we'll go to Member Halliday.
Happy New Year to everybody. My name is Stuart Halliday. I've been on this committee off and on for many, many years. And I was on council for 12 years as well. So I have got great experience with this committee, and I've always loved heritage. And I'm also involved with our museum and our library boards as well, which the three of those committees essentially are the three things that bring our culture in Grey Highlands together. So very pleased that with that. I've lived on Lake Eugenia for 30 years, and I did run a store for 21 years in Eugenia, as well as my professional career, which when I retired up here, I left behind in Toronto. So anyhow, it's nice to welcome you, Mr. Campbell, and to our community.
Thank you, Member Halliday. Next, we'll go to Member Wickens.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Coordinator Thompson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So this is my, I guess, second year of being on the Heritage for Grey Highlands. And I have been a resident of Eugenia for 36 plus years. I was a registered nurse at Durham for long-term care for 33 years. So I work in the county and I'm retired. I have 3 grown children and 4 grandchildren. And I really like following history. I always like listen to my grandparents tell stories and that. And my theory is history's like a barn. Everybody sees it. And then when it's gone, they notice it that it's not there anymore. And I think we need to do that same type of thinking with heritage buildings.
Thank you, Member Wickens. Next, we'll go to Member Dubik.
Hi there, my name is Nadia, and I am the council representative. So I'm a first-term councillor, and it's been my pleasure to serve on this committee. I've been learning lots about heritage, and do love the community that we serve here. In terms of background, I have over 20 years of business experience. The majority of that it was in the banking industry. I've been living here in Grey Highlands for I guess permanently for over 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now. We've had our farm for 20 years. So I was a weekender, and the plan was always to move up here once we retired. And with COVID, we just made that happen sooner. And so that's me. And Member Campbell, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Member Dubik. And last but not least, we'll go to Member Matthews.
Hello, I'm Nancy Matthews, and I've been on the Heritage Committee since 2011 and chair since 2012, and been through a few designations and a few other things. My background, in university, I studied architecture. I left before I got my degree and I never practiced, but being a world traveler as a result of my career as an in-charge flight attendant, very much acquainted with the history of art and architecture, with architectural styles. And so being able to assess and identify heritage features and a fairly good knowledge of how things can be maintained and or fixed is what I bring to the committee. And I'm also, for 4 or 5 years now, I've been on the Board of Community Heritage Ontario, which is a volunteer organization sponsored by the Ministry in charge of Heritage. And at the current time, I'm the vice president. I manage the newsletter. And I too would like to welcome Thomas onto the board. And I look forward to putting his historical knowledge to work, doing some research on some of our properties when these come forward and need researching. I'll show you where the books are and you can just dig in. How's that, Thomas?
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for taking the time to introduce yourselves. So next we'll move on to item 2 on today's agenda, which is the election of the chair and the vice chair. And I will lead us through the process. The process for the election shall be as follows. I will start with the position of chair. I will call 3 times for nominations. Each nomination shall require a seconder. The nominee is allowed to nominate him or herself. However, a seconder is still required. Once I have called 3 times for the position of chair, I will close nominations and verify that the nominees wish to let their names stand. If there is only one nominee, that person shall be acclaimed. If more than one nominee, a secret ballot vote shall commence, and I will then repeat the process for the position of vice chair. And when the election is complete, I will hand the reins over to the newly elected or appointed chair. Does anyone have any questions about the election process before we begin? Seeing no questions, we'll get started. So the floor is now open to nominations for the position of chair. Are there any nominations for the position of chair? Member Halliday.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Nancy Matthews as chair.
Second.
Thank you, and seconded by Member Ferguson. Thank you for that. I'll call a second time for nominations for the position of chair. Seeing none, and I will call a third and final time for the position for nominations for the position of chair. Seeing no further nominations, Member Matthews, do you wish to let your name stand for the position of chair?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the committee for your support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Member Matthews. You have been acclaimed acclaimed to the position of chair. So now we'll proceed on to nominations for for the position of vice chair. I apologize, I'm stumbling over my words today. The floor is now open for nominations for vice chair. Member Matthews?
I nominate Emmett Ferguson.
I second that.
Thank you, Member Ferguson and Member Wickens. I'll call a second time for nominations for the position of vice chair. And I'll call a third and final time for nominations for position of vice chair. Seeing no further nominations, Member Ferguson, do you wish to let your name stand?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I can confirm, Member Ferguson, that you have been acclaimed to the position of vice chair for the 2025 year. So that concludes this portion of the agenda, and I will pass the chair to Member Nancy Matthews for the remainder of the meeting.
Just for the benefit of Thomas understanding how we do stuff, I can't speak to issues when I'm chairing the meeting, so I would like to hereby turn the chair over to Vice Chair Emmett Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair Matthews. I accept. Yeah, just that this tends to be how we run things. Is that Nancy does all the hard work, and I get to come in on a quarterly basis and chair these meetings with occasional participation on the committee, or rather the working group side as needs be. But so we've got our agenda before us. I'll open the floor to motions to approve that agenda. Thank you, Member Wickens and Member Dubik. Any discussions, changes, amendments, anything people want to see? Member Halliday?
Yes, the last meeting we had a member's privilege for that meeting. I was wondering if we might be able to add a member's privilege as an ongoing basis so we don't have to approve it each time.
I agree very much with that.
And I would make that motion.
Certainly. So that's fine. I guess Member Dubik, Member Wickens, is that acceptable to have members' privilege, and we can bring up a secondary motion to make sure that that occurs in every meeting going forward at the time.
Maybe could we have a motion to approve members' privilege as an agenda item, and when it comes up, Stuart can deal with members' privilege as an ongoing suggestion for the agenda. Would that be the easiest way to do this?
Yeah, there's a motion on the table just for this agenda. So I'm just going to include members' privilege, and Member Halliday is free to bring up a secondary motion regarding the status of that item going forward when we arrive at that item, if that makes sense, just so that we have. Go ahead.
Technical situation here, whether Coordinator Thompson would allow a motion to come from the members' privilege at this time. At that time, or whether I can do it right now and solidify it as an ongoing addition to the agendas, whatever she thinks is the best way to proceed.
Through the chair to Member Halliday, as indicated by Member Ferguson, I have made a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the floor to add a member's privilege section after the completion of section 6 on today's agenda. After approving the agenda, if there is a subsequent motion that's moved to add that item to all future Heritage Committee meeting agendas, that would be fine.
Well, that's great. There's many ways to skin a cat. That's one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks all. Any other discussions on the agenda for today? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the agenda as presented with the inclusion of members' privilege? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Next item is for declarations of pecuniary interest. Do any members have any items of pecuniary interest that they'd like to acknowledge at this time?
Just to clarify, this is Thomas's first meeting. For example, at one point, a member of the committee, we were discussing a property owned by a member of the committee, That Stuart used to own a heritage building that's on the Heritage Register. So if that was being discussed, he would have to declare a pecuniary interest if something that we were discussing was going to have an effect on a property that he financially owned. That's kind of, it's mostly if you're involved with the property or the owner of the property is your wife or something like that. We need to know that. Fair enough.
Or indeed any firm or going concern that may be related to any of the work of the committee or its agents, right? So if it's not just on the ownership side, but if you're
exactly.
a contractor who does heritage work or whatever, and it comes
Yeah.
up as sort of a place where that could be pointed out.
Okay.
That's fine. So seeing no declarations at this time, I'll just move to minutes, and I'll open the floor to motions regarding Heritage Greyhounds Committee minutes of October 22nd, 24.
I move the minutes be accepted as distributed, or whatever, accepted as
Matthews,
presented.
is
I
there a second?
second it.
Thank you, Member Wickens. Any discussion or amendments? Member Halliday?
Yes, I'm not sure whether or not I missed that, but the walking tour concept with the South Grey Chamber of Commerce, was that resolved at council? Did they agree to that, or
That's
Nadia?
on the agenda of this meeting, Stuart.
Is it? Okay, sorry.
You'll see it for 6.2.
I looked at it, but I missed it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Any further items forthcoming from the minutes of last meeting? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor of adopting the minutes from October as presented? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Moving on to section 6, we've got some items for consideration. I will open the floor to motions regarding reception of terms of reference for Heritage Greyhounds Committee for information.
Yeah, the motion is to receive the terms for information. I'm a little bit curious. Coordinator Thompson, was that was not something I was that placed on the agenda for the benefit of our new member Campbell, or just to remind all of us of what we're here for?
No, thank you. Through you, Member Ferguson. These terms of reference are actually an amended, a revised version from the previous version. These terms of reference were approved by council on December 4th, 2024. So there were some minor revisions to the terms of reference in regards to Heritage Grey Highlands Committee terms of reference, really just housekeeping updates. There was a thorough terms of reference review, which was completed partway through 2024. The terms of reference were reviewed by committee of the whole and recommendations were made to council. And in terms of these specific terms of reference, the main changes was simply to kind of clean up the formatting such that all committee terms of reference for the many committees that we have here in Grey Highlands look the same. Everything's laid out in the same fashion. Also, specifically, there was a provision for meeting attendance included in this terms of reference, whereas a member is absent from 3 consecutive meetings, the absence will prompt a review of their membership status. That was at the direction of council to include that. Just taking a quick look, I don't believe there was actually any other changes. So this was just an opportunity to make sure that the members were informed that the terms of reference have been revised and provide them with a copy of the bylaw that was approved by council to establish those. That's it.
Thank you, Coordinator Thompson. Any other questions around these terms of reference? Or
I read them. They seem real enough, and I think it's it's fairly standard with the terms of reference for most committees. I actually do like that it does include more clarification of the fact that as a heritage committee, we're not only permitted, we're encouraged to interact with other organizations within our community and outside of our community that are dealing with heritage issues because, and so that means if, for example, down the road, if we want to be in some kind of a bigger partnership with the other municipalities in Gray that have heritage committees, that we don't have to keep running for permission to that, we can get that up and running and then bring results such as they may be to council at that time. I think that's a positive change.
Yep. Did we get a motion on the table?
No, we don't have a, I now that I understand what it was all about, I will so move.
Thank you. So move to receive for information, second by member Halliday. Any further final discussion on this before we move on? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving terms of reference for information? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Item 6.2, Council Resolution 2024-832 regarding heritage walking tours. And we've got a council resolution here for information. I'll open the floor for motions to receive, and then we can just acknowledge that we want to receive it, and then we can talk about it. Member Dubik, to receive, second. Thank you, Member Wickens. All in favor of receiving for information? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Nancy, do you want to talk about this?
Okay.
Would you like to talk about this? I know it just came up. Stuart also asked
still on the
about
terms
this.
of reference? Or on the walking tour?
This is for walking tour.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're actually a little bit stalled. This is a hard time of year to be doing this, to be getting out and doing anything. Half the time the roads are closed. And also, I mean, the primary person we're working with is the chair of the chamber. And he's very involved. I think his with family, he's got young children. And his role as helping to look after young children has greatly increased in the last little while. So I'll keep working with him, but we will need, once we get the and I do have the wording. I'll get it out and about and maybe ask different people who live in different areas to work. For example, when it comes to Rockland, Nadia might be the person that could review that the best and make sure that anything to see and do in Rockland is properly documented, and so on for the different communities, because there's 7 of these different things. So it's a fair bit of work to get them up and modernized and then put into a proper format, digitized, so that they'll download properly on one of these for a guy walking through town who sees a QR code that he can, pop on and find out where he is and what's to do.
Sounds good, Member Halliday.
Yes, a bit of an update on the. I didn't know whether or not the South Gray Chamber of Commerce had actually put that to their board yet, and whether that's the case. But Ruben is now moving on to another position. On February the 3rd, he's going to become the assistant director of at the hospital foundation, and they've hired somebody else to replace Ruben on a full-time basis. I haven't met the person, but so Nancy, I would suggest that somehow you interface with them to try and make sure that they're moving forward on that, and then let's try and. I mean, you did put that one on, which was from Flushing, and there's 7 of those particular tours which need to be updated, and we need to figure out how we will update them, whether or not we will form a subcommittee.
I do have the original documentation courtesy of Kate Russell.
Yes,
And
right.
I was working with Ruben, and now that I know what, you know, it's been very silent. And of course, over the Christmas holidays and with the weather.
No, I
here,
understand that. This is
but
just new.
thank you. It's really good to know that we need to touch bases with the new coordinator and make sure that that is something that
Right.
he or she needs to participate in. And I know we'll also be working with Peter Whitehead so that the museum can be kind of a stopping place, because there's a big sign, you know, tourists welcome, you know, come on in, get the brochures. But the idea is it's more than a paper brochure. It needs to be digital, so that people can
Right.
download it, they print it. You know, the current brochures, unfortunately, they're lovely when they're printed, but they're 8.5 by 14. And I don't know, but is there anybody on this committee that can print documents that big? I can't. And, you know, they have them in two different pieces of paper. So they need to be reformatted to be printable, standard 8.5 by 11 if people want to print them, and visible and readable on a cell phone for people that are just walking around town referring to that. So those are things that we might end up trying to call in somebody with more IT experience. Maybe somebody from IT in the local high school would like to help with this as a project. Once we get a little bit closer to having something that looks like it's doable, you know.
Great.
We do have
Yeah.
some IT expertise. Who is Jeff Rosenberg is the new acting CEO of the library, and Jeff has an IT background, so we can always tap into him for advice.
Actually, the library is a good idea. That would be a really good project for them, and they do have a lot of local heritage stuff going on. Yeah.
And the original ones were written actually by Kate Russell when she was the curator of the museum. So
following this discussion, I mean, do we need a motion that HGH will continue to work on this project with the new people involved? Because since we started this, the head librarian has changed, the head of CAA has changed. Do we need a motion or something, Danielle, or is the discussion that we are going to follow up and continue sufficient?
Through Chair Ferguson, to you, Member Matthews, my suggestion would be no. Council has approved for the group to go ahead and do this work. So the motion as the resolution of council does not require another resolution of the Heritage Group.
They don't require anything till we come back with a finished product for them to approve. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess we've got the working group sort of there. You can call upon them and sort of do that however makes best for you, Nancy. Member Dubek?
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the motion reads to working with South Garry Chamber of Commerce. So it refers to the organizations versus individuals. So you have the latitude to be able to, you know, to work with whoever you need to there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. So we'll move to to our chair's update for 6.3. I'll entertain motions to receive that report. Thank you, Member Wickens. Member Dubik as second. Any discussion before we receive? All in favor? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Nancy, let us know what's up.
No, sorry, I was just.
No, sorry.
What am I supposed to do?
This is your chair's update for January.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. So certainly.
Want to talk through it, or?
Okay, so everybody got that. The cultural landscape is in staff hands at the moment, will be brought back to council. I think the timing was really good on the presentation, and I think there was a fairly good understanding that this could be, although it's new, it could be a really good solution because it's a lot broader reaching than individual designations of individual properties, and I'm far less complicated than creating a heritage district. So that was good. We're renewed for CHO. I'm still on the CHO board. Our working group member, Jessica Starecki, is on the CHO board. She's currently taking a leave of absence from duties from both HGH and CHO due to some serious family things that have occurred. She's just kind of getting her head around things and hoping to get back probably more into the spring, getting back into things. And if there is an issue with that by late spring, then I'll bring that to the next meeting to be addressed. Oh yeah, the Rockland General Store. So Nadia, I dropped in there with a friend wanted milk, so we stopped in and the owner was there. It's really cool. He's partially restored it. It's been a general store for 150 or 160 years. It was the front room of a farmhouse, but that's how many general stores are. The new owner is running it again as a general store, some food, some really cool local arts and crafts, a good tourism stopping spot. In the past, as the Rockland General Store, they sold propane, not fill your giant tank to heat your house. Trade your propane tank in so you can run your barbecue, like they do at most of the general stores around here. When he asked to get a permit to do that, he was told the property is zoned commercial. No, the property is not zoned commercial. It is zoned industrial, and they want the municipality wants thousands of dollars for him to change the zoning to commercial, even though a grandfather clause for that property is that it's been a general store, i.e. had commercial uses on and off, but mostly on, since like 1851 or something. And so I think it's just, it happens in all municipalities with heritage properties where, if it's not necessarily, it isn't listed, but it could be. He's quite interested actually in that whole process. So it's something we can get going, but we know that takes like 6 months to get something designated. Sometimes I think, the staff is doing exactly their due diligence in saying, this is these are the rules, these are the bylaws, this is what you have to adhere to. But I'm thinking that part of our role in the community would be to maybe talk to staff about the idea of regarding that as a grandfathered usage for that property, given the long history of it. And for something as simple as selling propane, it shouldn't cost him thousands and thousands of dollars to get it rezoned. That's kind of that situation that I've only just sort of tiptoed into it so far. I just heard about it and I haven't actually had another discussion with him, but he does have our contact information. And if the committee agrees that it's something that we could get involved in or should get involved in, then I'll proceed. Danielle's back on.
Through Member Ferguson, to Member Matthews, my thought in just the terms of reference for the Heritage Committee, that subject matter seems like it's a planning matter rather than a heritage matter. So my opinion would be that that does not fall under the purview of the Heritage Committee.
And why is it not a heritage matter when we're talking about a historic heritage general store? We have 3 historic general stores that are listed on our register that we would certainly like to see. Yeah, go ahead, because it's not listed.
Through the chair to you, Member Matthews, I think we're talking about 2 different topics. Yes, if the owner of the general store wishes to pursue a heritage designation for their property, certainly this would be the place to discuss that. However, to me, the rezoning from industrial to commercial in order to have the propane sales, that's a planning matter, and that's outside of the mandate of this committee.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. It would not be inappropriate though, to my mind, if he is going to approach them, to have a letter of support from the Heritage Committee that maintaining a Heritage General Store is in line with heritage preservation. You know, what he's trying to do is certainly in line with our objectives. So, okay, fair enough, but I understand, and will not proceed with anything official on this particular topic. Okay, Town of Blue Mountains, that's just an update. That sort of fell through the cracks again with winter and stuff. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that as chair of Heritage Grey Highlands. I'm doing it in my role of CHO. However, because they are our next door neighbor and because we interact and we share boundaries, you know, like the whole Beaver Valley Heritage Corridor, you know, once you hit Gray Road 40, you're in the town of Blue Mountains. So we will be interacting with them locally on heritage issues. So it's just kind of, I think it's a good thing. And there's other municipalities that have, they set up like a once or twice a year, they set up whether it's a Zoom meeting or a meeting of representatives of all the different heritage committees. Like we could do it with Owen Sound, Collingwood, Hanover, Meaford, that all have heritage committees, and sort of develop strategies to deal with mutual interests or issues that we all have in common, and present a united front to county, for example, on some of those things. So that to me is just a good thing. And the last thing I was doing was, of course, interacting with community groups. I went to a heritage, Nadia, were you there for the forest presentation in Kimberley? I think you were. The indigenous people that were presenting about preserving that forest property in Kimberley. It was actually really interesting because we were interacting with young indigenous people from Cape Croker, and it was nice to know, like, they're going back to their heritage things. Nice to know that technology exists locally. If other people are wanting to restore forests to natural, into more sort of natural things rather than things that have been imported or are non-indigenous species. So that was quite beneficial. I felt like there was a good interaction, and there seemed to be a good feeling for them to interact with our community as well. And so when we are dealing with heritage properties that have indigenous roots, I feel, as a result, I kind of feel more comfortable approaching the council at the reserve and asking for participation and input. And the third group that I've been approached by is Voice for Culture in Grey Highlands. They want to combine, and the Stewards group. I was going to put it on the agenda, but at the moment, because they have not yet taken what they want to do to council, I can only participate as a private citizen, which I will do in an upcoming meeting. And then depending on how it goes, once they have presented to council, and if they request that we be allowed to participate, and then we would need permission from council to do that as a committee, officially as a committee of council. So that's kind of where we stand with that one. And
does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff for Nancy? Nancy, offhand, was it Big Edo Wad Alliance that came down? I saw they were doing a thing around the general store and stuff. Is that the indigenous group you were referring to? Nadia thinks it is. Okay.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I'm curious what the Voice for Culture in Grey Highlands is exactly.
You're curious about what at Grey Highlands?
What is Voice for Culture in Grey Highlands? I'm just like, what is that?
Oh. You turn it to Stuart.
Sure. Yep. Sure.
Yeah, a bit of an update. John Butler and I have been working on the importance we feel of culture in the development of our community as it matures and more people come into it. And so we did have a program way back that started in 2013, and we did have a cultural plan that expired in 2018. So that's one of the loose ends that we have that hasn't been revised yet. So we've got a group of interested citizens that are interested in maybe looking at the concept once again. We did have a concept back in 2018, a cultural roundtable, and so, or even earlier than that. And so we're just kind of trying to take it, bring some loose ends that have been floating around back into focus. So that's the voice is right now is outside of any council situations, but once we get the voice organized, then we will have a voice that we will go to council to give them an update.
Sounds great.
And Nancy was on the original cultural planning committee as well. So
makes sense.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Well, I remember a meeting that Emma's father was there and spoke a lot about stuff.
He does do that from time to time. Any further questions or comments for Nancy about her report? Seeing none.
What I didn't put on there was going forward, now that the the bylaw, sorry, I'm not calling it legislation, the bylaw for the tax rebate is real and readable and moving forward. I will probably really step up my approach to the owners of listed properties because I can now offer them a very real possible incentive to go forward with designation. So we've been kind of waiting for that, and now that it's here, we and I may be calling on the working group to assist with some of that letter writing and approaching owners and so forth.
That's good. So it seems like a reasonable segue into item 6.4 regarding heritage tax rebates and the updates there too. So we've got a proposed motion that we receive staff report CTE 2501.
I guess, am I supposed to just make a motion that the committee accept my report for information?
We did that at the beginning, as is my habit, to receive the information and then to talk about it so that we're ready to move on to 6.4. So I'll open the floor for motions to receive the staff report. Member Wickens, thank you. Is there a second? Member Campbell. Seeing that, any discussion before we decide whether to receive or not?
I read through it, and I had a little chat with Danielle before the meeting started because it's very complicated and it is it's a bylaw. I would like to talk to Clerk Van Alstine, just as a one-on-one about a few of the terms that could maybe be tweaked a bit. I have concerns that it might be a little bit, it was based on the Owen Sound model. Owen Sound is a big city with more than one cultural heritage district. We're a small municipality with no cultural heritage district. So we have to be careful that we don't make our bylaw based on theirs overly complicated for a rural designation that has somewhat different situations. And so I just, in discussion with Amanda, I would probably be able to get a better understanding of it. But I think, I definitely believe we should accept this for information and, 3 cheers that it is on the table and I certainly am very positive about this going forward because I think it is a huge benefit. Oh, and the other note that I would make too, there was something about the fact that Grey County has not indicated anything. We do know that Grey County has already approved a similar matching, I don't know, Thomas, I don't know if you're aware. Our taxes are roughly divided into 3/3. There's the municipal level, the educational level, and the county level, the upper tier. And so our bylaw would only give 20% on the municipal level. The province policy is to match that, to give the same amount on the educational level. Grey County so far already matches Owen Sound and it already matches Meaford. There's no reason to think they won't match Grey Highlands when we get the bylaw up and running. It just hasn't been put in writing yet.
Thanks, Member Matthews. Any other sort of discussion, questions, comments before we accept? Member Dubik and then Member Halliday.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have a question about process, and maybe this is for Coordinator Thompson. In terms of next steps, I'm not sure. So wondering if, I think it would be very helpful to ensure that council does receive any comments, questions, concerns, from Nancy and or anybody else, in this committee. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of process, would the next step be for this bylaw to go to council? And so this wouldn't be discussed again at this committee, but it would be, I think, going to council. So just would want to ensure that if there are any comments from Nancy and any other committee members, that council does hear them.
Go ahead, Coordinator Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Ferguson. Through you to Member Dubik. That's a great comment. I did mention to Member Matthews that her comments would be welcome to be sent to the clerk in terms of making sure that comments from this body are received by council. My thoughts on the best process for that, aside from moving a specific resolution in today's meeting, which I don't know if the committee is prepared to do that. Just going to take a quick look at the terms of reference to see if there is the capability for the group to call a special meeting. In terms of collecting to provide a specific response from Heritage Grey Highlands, my thought would be that would need to be compiled in a meeting. So that would need to probably come at today's meeting or in a future meeting. So if the committee made a motion to schedule for staff to work to schedule a special meeting such that formal comments could be assimilated and provided in a resolution, or the committee could direct Chair Matthews to provide comments to staff. It really depends on how the committee wants to go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
This agenda didn't come out until Friday, so I mean that the first I got to read it, I guess was yesterday, was because I had something on. I was busy all day Saturday. I mean, it's a big document and there's a lot of things that I do have a few concerns, or not about the aim of it, but where certain wording could become wrongly enforced at the municipal level by staff and cause undue problems for the person who should be benefiting from it. And that's kind of the whole idea, is just for this to be an incentive. The whole reason that there's all of those restrictions about spending money, improving and having insurance and stuff, that is so that you don't just take the tax break and neglect the property and let it fall down anyway. You need to be maintaining it and, you know, keeping it up. But you have to be careful not to make, as I said to Danielle, insurance is more expensive on a heritage building. Heating is probably more expensive. There are expenses you might put in a new furnace, which is designed to remove the moisture from your brick, your brick walls and your insulation, because originally the building wasn't insulated. There's things like that are helping to protect the building, but they're not visual. They're expensive, but they're not visual. And so we have to be really careful that we don't kind of stick to, well, what you see is what you get, because there's all kinds of, as we all know as homeowners, there's stuff behind the scenes that costs a lot of money. And if it's a heritage building, it can cost more because it's older stuff that's you're trying to maintain. Anyway, I like the idea, perhaps, I mean, for now, I don't, did anybody else read? I read through the whole thing and I have read several of these documents, but it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of assess where I think it's good or where I think we could have a problem because of our particular, it's not that there's anything wrong with the document, it's that we are not a large urban municipality like Owen Sound. We're an expanded rural community, collection of villages or whatever it is people like to call us. And so that's a little bit different, and it might need to be tweaked to fix that. Sorry.
Thanks, Member Matthews. Just before we go to Coordinator Thompson, I'm just going to suggest we basically get through the reception of this for information. We haven't voted on the initial motion, just to receive. And then it sounds like, Nancy, you're sort of in the position of wanting some motion of what we're going to do as a committee in order to give this the due process and comment that we think might make best sense. However, in the meantime, I'll just pass it over to Coordinator Thompson, knowing that Member Halliday has still been waiting his turn to speak.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Ferguson. The committee could choose to defer receiving the staff report for information and schedule a virtual special meeting prior to the April meeting. That's an option, and they could receive the report at that meeting and formulate any recommendations to council that they wish if they don't feel that they're prepared to provide those comments today.
Just so I'm clear on this, I mean, I don't think there's anything that would necessarily mean that we can't just accept it for information, but like, we have clearly looked at it. We are sort of receiving it today. I think it's more just, do we want to schedule a special meeting? Do we want to empower the chair and or the working group to provide comment directly to council, and indeed recommend that they maybe hold on deciding on the exact nature of the bylaw until we can provide such comment? But just some of the options there. Member Halliday?
Yeah, thank you for that update. I think my question really rolls back a little bit in Nancy's comments that Owen Sound is more a cityscape, and whether or not Meaford actually has passed a bylaw that allows them to give a tax rebate for their heritage homes, and whether Nancy could enlighten me on that. And then I would compare maybe apples with apples, different types of apples, but still apples, against Meaford's versus Owen Sound's approach to it. So anyhow, that's the question I have, Nancy.
I'm not sure that I've checked. I mean, I believe Meaford was proceeding with it, whether it was passed or not, I'd have to check into it. There's other municipalities, and I did offer one way back when Raylene was still the clerk for Tiny Township, which is a lot more like us. It's a
Right.
rural
I know Tiny, yes.
recreational thing. And a friend of mine actually has a tax incentive, and he has an easement. Half of his home is like a really old post office, which is
Right.
now, so he gets a tax rebate on half of his home, which is fine. That's how it works. But I when I looked at this, I thought, holy cow, it's a lot more complicated than the one from Tiny. So I like Stuart's idea that it would be worth looking at for comparison, looking at tax incentives from a municipality that has a bigger resemblance to our Grey Highlands geography and sociology, and just for and whether they choose to go ahead or tweak it. I kind of like Emmett's idea. We accept this today for information. We pass a separate motion that we as a committee feel that we require some time to analyze and understand the terminology, and we would like the opportunity before this is passed as is to make a comment to staff for the information of council. That's our job, is to help council deal with heritage issues, and this is certainly one of them. That we would like a little bit of time and the wherewithal to at a future time, a month from now, and whether that needs a special meeting, whether we do working group meetings to chat with it for the people that are really interested in this issue. And I can get my buddy from Tay involved, and I've got copies of their agreement, and they do it more with an easement than with the bylaw itself, and that might be a better way for us to go.
So sorry, Member Halliday, I'm just going to call the question on the receiving of information and then open it back up to see what kind of motion we might want to form as to our next steps. Is that all right?
Yep.
So I'll just call the question. All in favor of receiving the report for information? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. And I'll open the floor to motions or comments toward a motion for what we might want to do next. Member Halliday?
Yeah, motion to take this to a working committee group of volunteers from this committee to explore options and even think about a cost benefit analysis, etc. So I think it needs, while it's well done, it's complex, but I think we need to sort of do a little bit of homework before we bring it off to council. So I recommend it go to a working committee that Nancy we can meet at the library, all right, and then work on it.
Yeah. So I would consider Halliday maybe including some sense of timeline, like how long we expect to take.
Well, before the next meeting, to have a plan to come back, which is in April. So between the working committee should work during February and March to see if there's some refinements that can come back to the April meeting.
So as I take it, the motion would be to empower the Heritage Grey Highlands Working Group to convene and conduct a review meeting for
an assessment of the terms and references, and to put forward any valid suggestions that they come up with, however you phrase that.
So are we thinking recommendations from that working group meeting will come back here for the whole group before going to council?
And if we need to, I know that we need to sort of expedite this, or I want to get it expedited so people can get this rebate for the 2024 tax year. So if it's a special meeting, it's a special meeting. We call a one issue meeting, which we have the ability to do, with about a 1 week. Yeah, right. We need like a 1 week.
Thanks, Nancy. The proposed motion is for this to be a working group rather than the
But the
committee.
working group has to come back unless the working group can go straight to staff. I don't know. Maybe Danielle looks like she has something she wants to say about that.
Sure, go ahead, Coordinator Thompson.
Thank you. Chair Ferguson, through you. Yes, procedurally, the working group does report to the Heritage Grey Highlands Committee. And so any reporting would be to the Heritage Grey Highlands Committee, which would then provide comment to council. So that was where I was a little unsure as to the timeline that the committee wanted to see for receiving these, for reviewing the document, providing comments back to council. The next Heritage Grey Highlands Committee meeting is scheduled for April. Under the terms of reference, this group actually isn't permitted to call a special meeting. However, the group can schedule up to 4 meetings, a minimum of 4 meetings annually. So we could move a motion to schedule another meeting between now and April if that's at the will of the committee, and I can certainly poll the members to secure a date, or the comments can come back to the April meeting. I've also included in the draft recommendation that the Heritage Grey Highlands Committee recommends that council defer consideration of the final heritage tax rebate bylaw until comments are received back from Heritage Grey Highlands Committee. But as in terms of the timeline, that's at the will of the group.
Yeah. So it seems to me that the best way to do this is probably going to be if we want our comments to be considered by council in order to support the timeliness of this, it probably means scheduling something between now and April, and then just getting the working group together to do that, but then have this meeting be a meeting to sort of just review what happened at that working group. Nancy?
Maybe the motion should be that today as a committee, we authorize the working group volunteers to look into this and to bring back their findings and their recommendations to the committee as a whole at a special meeting that will be scheduled. The timing of that meeting TBA, with a minimum of 1 week of notice or whatever for the time. I mean, I'm looking at the guy, we have to watch for March break if we want to have a meeting in March, because I know that is a difficult time for some people. But, I think March break is the 10th or the 15th. So, like that first week of March, which gives us a month. We're not sure how long this is going to take. So could we, have the motion say, brought back to the committee at a special, at the next committee meeting, or at a specially scheduled meeting if that becomes feasible or desirable or something like that.
I think that's all fine, except that if we don't apparently in the terms of reference have the ability to call a special meeting as such, but it sounds like we can just schedule another meeting. So if we want to actually say what date we want to meet between now and the next scheduled meeting, we can just include that in the calendar now, and the working group can do whatever it needs to do in order to get to that meeting in due course.
And if the meeting has to be deferred or canceled, that can happen. But we need, should we just pick like March 18th, which is go ahead.
Through the chair, my suggestion would be if the committee would like to identify March as the month, staff can poll and find a date in that month that works for the group.
Great.
Oh, I apologize. I'm just getting a message from the clerk. It appears that she's watching. So the clerk the clerk has let me know that she does not want the group to defer consideration. Council has not seen the bylaw yet, and she will not be presenting the bylaw to council until such time as she has received comments back from Heritage Grey Highlands Committee. So I still think that if we'd like to establish a date in March, if that's at the will of the committee, we can certainly do that. We can just state in the resolution that the committee would like to schedule a date in March with the specific date to be identified by staff in consultation with the members.
Okay, so it sounds like we're pretty much covered, and maybe we'll just talk about when we want to meet next in item 7 for next meeting. Taking the clerk's suggestion that this isn't really likely to go much further until and unless we get something back materially. Great. Well, we've received it for information at any rate, and now we'll move on to item 6.5 regarding Feversham Methodist.
So I think we need a motion that the working group will consider and bring back to the committee as a whole at a meeting to be scheduled in March. And we can just leave it at that. And then when the meeting is scheduled, I'm sort of looking at maybe about the 18th of March, which gives us about 6 weeks, which, there's a lot of work to do, and people have other things on their plate besides this.
Okay, that sounds good. Do I have a second for Member Matthews? Thank you, Member Wiggins. Any final discussion on this? Great. All in favor? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Moving on to 6.5, Feversham Methodist Cemetery. Do I have a motion regarding this?
I would like to move that we and that we recommend the council approve designation. What's attached is not a proper designation attribute statement. And as far as I understand, and I know Amanda's listening, as I understand it, council can approve designation, and as long as there's a list of what is being designated, the designation notice to the public doesn't necessarily have to be the whole bylaw. The bylaw itself, and then there's a double step. Once the council approves it, the community gets a month to object, then it goes back to council with the actual bylaw that does contain the bylaw for designation, which the clerk prepares, and then it has what they call Schedule A, which is the thing that we as the working group, aka me usually, so I did list what those criteria would be very close to in the wording that will be used. And, so I just want to get the process started because otherwise it can take forever. And I cannot actually, there's one criteria that I can't do until the snow melts because I don't have proper pictures of those gravestones to see if they're even in good enough form to be able to declare them a physical attribute, because I do know, it says in the information we have that they're not in very good shape. And if they're really in bad shape and they're not readable, then they can't have a correct, their physical design attributes. You can't sort of call that an attribute if you can't see it and appreciate it.
Coordinator Thompson?
Thank you, Chair Ferguson, through you to Nancy. I had some thoughts on this as well. My suggestion would be that staff would hold off placing this recommendation on a council agenda until such time as you have provided that official draft draft of the heritage attributes, because there is a timeline that starts to progress once council has noted that they wish to designate the property. So my thought would be that we wait until you have that finalized heritage attributes document and you have sent that to staff, then we would place it on a council agenda for consideration.
Okay. See where I'm partially disagree. I know that it cannot possibly go as a bylaw, but council can approve the designation, approve designating that property without having, if they have sufficient information and they can be assured, as they have been by this information, that there are 2 or more heritage attributes that we as a committee recognize and have recognized when we listed the property, they don't need the bylaw criteria to approve the concept of designating it. They cannot do the actual designation and or have a bylaw without that. So I agree, but to me that designation, making us do that before they've actually approved it. What if they decide not to approve it and I put 4 days work into writing up a document of something that they've decided they don't want to approve? And so in most municipalities, you approve that it has the criteria, then you write the stuff, and then you get the bylaw to council, and then you go through the whole other really long process. But you start with getting council, giving council way more than enough information to approve the concept of designation. The actual designation doesn't occur till well down the road, as agreed with all of the criteria properly documented.
Good.
That's my understanding of how the act works as well, but.
Through you, Chair Ferguson, my suggestion would be that the finished product goes to council, so they have all the information at the time that they're considering the designation. And that's typically how, in the past, how the heritage attributes have been presented to Grey Highlands Council. So my suggestion would be that we continue with that status quo and have more of a finalized document to provide to council at the time that they're considering the designation.
So for today, we need the council, we need this committee. And you know what? I will write it and I will write in that there are heritage attributes in the stones. And if in the final bylaw we remove that from it, that so be it. But I will write it in because I know there's a potential there. I just want to make sure that the stones, at least one of them, has enough documentation to be there. So I can do that. But we need the committee to approve it being designated, and I will, on the condition that it will not go to council until that documentation is received. I can live with that.
So it sounds like there's an amendment to the motion as presented.
Yeah, okay. I would like to move that the committee move the motion, and that Chair Matthews will forward the appropriate designation criteria formatted for a future bylaw at her earliest convenience or something like that. That fair enough, Danielle?
Through the chair, I don't think we need to include that. I think that I can just await the information from Chair Matthews, and then the committee can move the motion as it's been included on the agenda.
Okay, sounds good. Any final comments?
I was just trying to speed everything up, but okay.
Suggestions? No, that's fine. Great, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion for 6.5 as presented? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Item 7, next meeting. So we have one scheduled for April 22nd, 2025. If we would like to select a date earlier than that for a separate meeting regarding the proposed bylaw for tax purposes, now might be a good time to do that.
Can we just change one word in that motion, that the next scheduled meeting, or, okay, Danielle's got a suggestion. Go ahead, Danielle.
So through the chair to the committee, in the motion that was moved under 6.4 for the heritage
Yeah,
tax
we were just-
rebate, I did include that the working group would be coming back to Heritage Grey Highlands with their comments at a meeting to be scheduled in March. So I don't think we need to make any changes. I can certainly include a note in the agenda that there will be an additional meeting scheduled in March, but I don't think that we need to have an additional motion moved at this time. I will circulate a poll to schedule that meeting in March.
Sounds good. So we're going to be meeting at the latest April 22nd, but probably before that, sometime in March. Check your inboxes between now and
I
then.
was just looking for a word like this is a normal meeting, not a normal meeting.
An exceptional meeting.
No. We have a special meeting coming up.
Special
Next meeting-
consideration.
Yeah, whatever. But the meeting in April is a normally scheduled meeting, like it's a regular meeting, or I don't know what the word is. There's some kind of official word for that sort of stuff. I'm not a
That
meeting
will
person.
also
I've
be-
been on airplanes my whole career.
April, we're meeting in person as well. So just for everyone's information, to try and remember that. I know I forgot that one time this past year and ended up not being able to attend. So I guess, yep, we know what we're doing for item 7, and I'll pass it on to members'
How
privilege.
about the next regularly scheduled meeting?
Indeed.
The next regular scheduled meeting will be, and that's fine. Yeah. Or whatever.
Fantastic. So we're on to members' privilege. Do any members have any announcements or anything they'd like to talk about for the last few minutes of our meeting today? Member Halliday and then Member Wickens.
Yeah, so a bit of a follow-up on the Maxwell Church, which is the St. Mary's church, which was I think built in 1863. Just a bit of a follow-up. I spoke casually to the pastor of that church and said that if he would like to, I would certainly like to talk to him about that church. In the meantime, I did talk to the deputy mayor who sits on one of the committees at the county, and I know the county's interested in building an antique church at Morrison Village. And my suggestion to the deputy mayor was to suggest that the Maxwell Church might be, if it could be moved, and it would, and the diocese would allow it to be moved to Morrison Village as a heritage church. I haven't heard back, but that's the only thing that I've done on that particular thing. I will follow up with Dane to see whether there's anything happened, and then if nothing is,
they're closing that's the Anglican Church. It's closed, and they want to tear it down.
No, it's sitting there, all right, waiting for some sort of miracle to happen. And what that miracle is really hasn't been decided yet. It's deconsecrated at this particular time, and it's has a beautiful steeple, etc. So I'm just kind of, as a pet project, I'm just trying to see if it could be repurposed and moved to Morrison Village. That may not be impossible. May not be possible. So if that is, what would the diocese like to see? What could happen there? Could we then designate it and it stays in place, etc.? So I'm just kind of, that's all I'm working on. So
it's actually very unusual because it's one of the few wooden intact structures.
Right.
In terms of the design features, from an architectural point of view, are very interesting. The fact that it is in good shape. Us as a municipality recreating it for some kind of a secondary use, location is a bit of an issue. There's already a town hall in Maxwell. There's already a church being used as an event venue. There's a community center with a bowling alley in the basement. And the church is sitting in the middle of a heritage cemetery. The
Right.
church is surrounded by a cemetery. So I don't see that it could ever be sold to be repurposed even as a house. So unless it was a community use, of which Maxwell as a community doesn't really have a huge need, I'd like to see it preserved. We don't want to see it fall down because it's empty and deconsecrated. So I like the idea of maybe the working group and Stuart, you run the ball on this one, but keep bringing it back to the working group with ideas, and maybe some of us can help. And it looked to me like Sharon might have had an idea on that church.
Oh,
didn't she?
okay. Well, I'll just follow up with Dane to see if any movement happened for Morstan Village, and if nothing's happened,
But it
then I will
also might
speak.
be a good idea to hear, but it might be a good idea to hear what anybody else on the committee thinks that going
Yeah.
forward.
All right. It's up to the Anglican Church and diocese what they want to
Oh,
do.
yeah.
And,
Well, they own it, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, that's the only information that I have on that I would like to bring up under members privilege. Okay, so
Um, to forward to Stewart's information, if you ever come out of Collingwood on 6th Street and you come past that little frontier village kind of thing, and that the church there was moved from Gibraltar and taken down there, and that was the church my husband's mom and dad got married in.
really, okay.
Yeah, so things do work, and that would be nice if it could go up to Morriston, for everyone to enjoy.
So anyhow, that's just a little bit of a pet project. So
Member Wickens, I thought I saw your hand earlier just
Yes.
for other things. So go ahead with
Yes.
your.
I have that. Thank you. At our last meeting, I spoke about how at the Heritage Church, the United Church in Eugenia, we were changing over our heat source. We have completed that, found a lot of interesting things, but on our north wall that our heat system comes out to, it's almost 5 feet thick. And it was limestone, wood, some kind of goofy mortar, and then another set of limestone and wood, and then the big granite stones. They were going through drills like crazy trying to get for the pipes to go out. But it was quite interesting, and it is working. It's a change. This cold weather has given it runs for its money, but we were so pleased that we have been able to do that. And we right now are in the process of working with the United Church of Canada Faithful Footprints, that we can get a reimbursement back of our cost for reducing our carbon footprint.
Lovely. Yeah.
Anything further for people? Anyone want to bring anything up as a privilege?
I kind of wanted to go back to Stuart on what he was talking about before we changed the topic. Stuart, keep going on that. One of the things we could do as a committee, though, just to talking to the Anglican Church, we could, if they do agree to move it and it's restored, and the history of it is made clear up at the Grey Roos Museum, I love the idea of it becoming something that people can use and enjoy and appreciate. Maybe what we could do would be put up a sign, a really nice looking information board with a picture of the original church, with the history, because it's not going anywhere. The cemetery isn't going anywhere.
no,
And maybe what we do is we designate the site in the cemetery, while we're adding things to the register down the road, as something to consider. That it may be gone, but make sure it's not forgotten. It remains
becomes part of the history. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry, Sharon. I just sort of wanted to finish that one before we go to this.
No problem.
Great. Well, it seems like we're all pretty well satisfied. Go ahead.
I have one more question. Did we resolve the members' privilege
Oh no, you're
agenda,
right. Yep.
or is that
No,
supposed to come up now?
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that the members' privilege be automatically added as an agenda item to every heritage meeting.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Member Matthews.
Chairman agrees.
Any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. I will open the floor to motions of adjournment. Member Wickens and Member Matthews, all in favor?
Oh, before we adjourn, Thomas, is anything that happened today, have you got any questions about anything that happened today?
Thanks very much for checking in. No, I think I'm okay. Thank you.
On the topic of adjournment, sorry about that. The thing with motions to adjourn is that they allow no discussion. So all in favor? All against? All abstaining? Motion carries. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Coordinator Thompson, for all your hard work on our behalf.